Melchizedek. Melchizedek's a very interesting person. He is mentioned in Genesis chapter 14 for the very first time. He's also mentioned in Hebrews, and he's mentioned in the Psalms. David mentions him. Now, what's curious is that Melchizedek means king of righteousness. I always ask this of people, how do you prove your righteousness? There's only one way to prove your righteousness. And that's the answer is found in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 22 and 23. If a man is found guilty of a sin worthy of death and he is to be put on a tree, be sure and take this man's body down and bury him, for this man is cursed of God. Now, what that means is, if you want to prove your righteousness, it's very simple. Just allow yourself to be crucified. Sound familiar? Of course it does. As far as I know, there's only one king of righteousness, and he proved his righteousness by going to a cross. He knew what he had to do. It's absolutely incredible. You know, there's a scripture where Jesus has been questioned by the Pharisees, where he says to the Pharisees, Abram saw my day and he was glad. And the Pharisees said to him, how could you have met Abram? You're not even 50 years old. And he said to them, truly I tell you, before Abram was, I am. So I'm going to explain to you how it works, in a sense. If you've ever understood, how CDs work, or LP. I know I'm a bit old, so I'll try and make this as high-tech as possible. If you have a CD that somebody gifts you, and it's enclosed in plastic and it's never been used, and I asked you, where does the CD begin? And most people would assume that it begins with track 1000. For us, that would be Adam. But strangely enough, for God, it wouldn't. And that's not where it begins, where the track begins for you. The CD begins whichever song you play first. Forever, the song that you play first will be the first song that is played forever. You can't unchange that. And this is what happened. For instance, if you wanted to know how does God view time? He views time as that CD. And the first song he would be Jesus, because John chapter 1 actually says it. John chapter 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same was in the beginning with God. And through him everything that was made. And without him there was nothing made that was made. And what this is simply saying, and what John is trying to convey, is that this is where God's CD begins. It's simple, really. So for me, it makes perfect sense when Jesus says before Abram, when Abram saw his day and he was glad. And I look at the scriptures and I ask, where did Abram meet him? And the answer is found in Genesis chapter 14. You read Genesis chapter 14, and this will blow your mind. If you read Genesis chapter 14, Abram meets Melchizedek on the plains after the slaughter of the kings. But there's something very significant about this meeting. And that significant thing about the meeting is simply this, is that when he meets Melchizedek, Melchizedek offers him bread and wine. Now that sounds familiar too. So this is going to blow your mind. Was the Last Supper first, or was Abram first? Now the Last Supper was first. And when Melchizedek met Abram, he actually met Jesus. It's mind-blowing if you understand the concept of God, why Jesus is God. Because if Jesus is God, then he is outside of space and time. And it was after his crucifixion that he comes back to the beginning, or to the creation with the Father. Because he's back in eternity with his Father. You see, Melchizedek is not a type. It's not a shadow. It was Christ after he was crucified. Now I know most people are going to accuse me of being a Gnostic. I have no idea what that means, by the way, but go ahead, feel free, I don't mind. But when you look at it in that way, that Jesus is now outside of space and time, he met Abram on those plains, and he broke bread and wine, reminiscent of the Last Supper with him. He actually had the Last Supper with Abram. after he was crucified. And this is so incredible, which makes me think, how great his love was for us. Because if you consider the fact that John 1 verse 18 also says that no man has seen the Father except him who has proceeded forth from the bosom of the Father, then this is also true that who spoke those words in Genesis 1:26? That would have been Jesus as well. Now I ask you, how did Melchizedek prove his righteousness? The only thing, because Melchizedek, the name Melchizedek means king of righteousness. Now if you want to know if he was righteous, there's only one person that I know of that is the king of righteousness, which is Jesus Christ. So it makes perfect sense that after he was crucified and after being released from the bonds of time, he is now able to move through history and the future, mind you, at will, because he has inherited all that from his Father. Simple. So if you wanted to know who Melchizedek is, study that. And then you also understand why that the serpent recognized him when he met him and was in the man of the Gadarenes, the one who called himself Legion. He recognized Jesus, which was very strange for me until I understood that he met him in the Garden of Eden when Jesus walked with Adam and taught Adam everything about God. And that it is in that moment the serpent met him when Jesus cursed him in Genesis chapter 3. When the curse was laid upon the serpent, Jesus cursed him and declared war on the serpent, and the serpent was confused and couldn't understand how it was meeting Jesus 3,000 years later, and that Jesus had not changed, because it called him by his name. And it was in that moment that you understand that Jesus is Melchizedek. He is the one who wrestled with Jacob. Jesus is God.